faith. And what do we do when we have an apparent disagreement between the two? And I mentioned to you that there were 4 ways to look at it. You can try and fight it out and decide who's right and who's wrong. You can just simply put a wall down the middle and say science is here, religion is over here, they don't exist, they don't work together. That's not very satisfactory. It's not very satisfactory to try and strip them down so they fit, so they agree, because you end up with not a very good science and not very good theology either. So that can be a difficulty. And then I said, probably the best approach is dialogue. I once taught this in a class, and a student came to me after and said, that is very cowardly. He said, you're just dialogue. What does that mean? Dialogue, it could be anything. And you're really not addressing the issue. Well, I still believe in dialogue. I think there's a place for dialogue. And I wanted us to, where I don't usually do this, but I thought this might be kind of interesting for you to see. Here's an example of where religion and science came together and where it wasn't a happy issue at all. As I explained yesterday, there's a very large mountain on the island where I live called Mauna Kea, and it's a sacred mountain. It always has been. They believe it's the birthplace of Pele, the god of the Hawaiian Islands. So it's very, very sacred, but it also is extremely high, and as a result, they've put telescopes up there way beyond normal air. It's actually in world air, incredibly clean. As a result, they can get pictures out up there that you could not get anywhere else, probably in the world. There are 12 telescopes up there, and now they want to build number 13, the biggest of all. And as I said yesterday, I'm just repeating what I said, but 16 stories high, a huge, huge building, and right on the top of this sacred mountain. And basically, at this point, the Hawaiian people have said, enough. That's enough telescopes, that's enough desecration. We want you to stop. We do not agree with this particular telescope. So somewhere here I have a video. Let's see if I can find it. We go just ahead a little bit, I think. Let's see if we can find out something we could do. Here we go. There were now demonstrations going on, blocking the road that goes up to the telescope. Some of you have been there, I know. And there's only one road up. And so at the point where the main road meets this side road, they blocked it completely. They camped there and said, you will not go past. Nobody's going up on this mountain. And so it became a tremendous conflict. I want you to see this video because it presents it very powerfully. Is that showing? Okay. So I need to stop share?
Yeah.
And then go back.
Again, go to share screen.
Okay. And then go here or?
Yeah.
Oh, they're here. This one, yeah, got it. And then share. I'll get the hang of it eventually. Here we go.
Where's your hearts? Where's your hearts? Let them be. You choose money over us, kanakama ole. How can you do that? You know, Keakua did that. Not Iggy, not Meakim. Keakua made that for us to enjoy. Not bomb and desecrate our water. Ale, I give to you. La'i. La'i. How can you be so cold-hearted? Look what we have to do to hold our island. You guys make us do this. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. Please leave them alone. Go back to your ohana and talk about the desecration of our island.
To look up at that mountain and to wake up at Mauna Kea every single day and say, I am a descendant of this mana, that reminds us where we come from, because for so long we have been stripped of mana over and over again, with how they banned our language, our dance, stole the lands that we come from. And this is just a continuation of this colonial story here, with what the governor is doing, what the illegal occupying state of Hawaii is doing right now. But it's a paradigm shift. We are living in a time where we have every single possibility to create the change that our kupuna prayed for us to be. We are living out their prayers now. This whole gathering at the Mauna is changing everything for our people. It's not just about a telescope. It's not. This is our chance to remember what it's like to live with one another again and to share.
La'i. La'i. The leaf of love I give to all you folks. E honi. Oi honi.
And it also called on all of the eha that people still have, the pain that people still have, because intergenerational trauma is real. And I think that it triggered something in everybody. And you didn't have to be Hawaiian to feel it. I always say, if you live in Hawaii and you drink of this water and you eat of the food that this aina grows, all of the issues in Hawaii should matter to you. And what the Mauna told me the other day was no should have been enough, because we are still here and our indigenous people still matter and our voices still matter. And when we said no the first time when those first telescopes went up there, it should have been enough, but it wasn't. But now it's becoming enough again.
I agree.
We are everyone. We stand as pillars in the four cardinal points. We are the beloved warriors of this place, and we rise as mighty waves. We are the Kia'i. We are the guardians that stand as mountains. We are these standing rocks. We are the lava under our feet. We are the water protectors, and we rise like a mighty wave. Ehu, eh, woo! Ehu, eh, woo! Ehu, eh, woo! Mana o ibo ine e hiuka bo hina kanu kalu he ala e ia kuki no e ia kukula e ia kuku ai ai
What would you want to say to the world to give that information about how we feel about our position in science?
We are not anti-science. We are anti an 18-story building on a pristine area on the northern plateau over our sacred Mauna. 18 stories cannot be built on the mountain. I'm not against science, but I am against irresponsible decision-making in science. I'm against anything that will destroy sacred land, people's cultures, think that they can build because in the name of science, education, corporations, or businesses, they have the right to do that.
So it's not about the telescope, it's not about science, it's about sacred land. It's about Kanaka Maoli having the right to determine for themselves how our sacred places should be protected. Ultimately, this is a human right issue, right? That we are a real people, we have a real history, we have a real culture, we have a real language, we have a real religion, and we need to be recognized as such. And so the building of the 30-meter telescope, if it was in a different place, you know, Hawaiians might be some of the most supportive of it. But it's the fact that it's being built on sacred land in a very, very fragile ecosystem. There are species that live up there that only live up there. Not in that type of regions around the world, but only on Mauna Kea. It's where our sacred waters are. It's the dwelling place of many of our female akua. And these are also crown lands that were never ceded to the United States of America, but they were seized, they were taken away. We've never consented to the taking of these lands. And ultimately, we've never consented to the building of all of these telescopes. There's been resistance from the very beginning. Those who allowed the first telescope to be built in 1968 were told that that was going to be the only telescope.
And that was we're at 13 right now.
We're at 13, and that was a 30 millimeter. Now we're at a 30-meter telescope. Again, 13 telescopes later.
False promises never have removed 13 of them as of today.
Many of these telescopes have been the last telescope, right? And now TMT is the latest last telescope.
When I say solution, I think we must first see each other as human beings first. Because if we cannot see each other as equal human beings, how therefore can we even move forward in this question?
There is an alternative site.
There is.
Yeah. It's already being pursued. They've already looked at permits, and even just today,
there's many. There's actually many.
Yeah, there's actually more. And the thing is, well, then go to the places that want it, and the communities that actually support it full-heartedly. And you know, this place has been impacted enough, and you know, they ain't getting by. They're not getting up there. That's for sure.
Ridiculous is you can't build over 7 stories of Hilo.
No, you can't.
But you can build an 18-story on the tallest mountain in the world.
That is sacred to the Hawaiian people. You know, that says Komo ke aku aoi komo ke kanaka.
We have 2 more years to continue to stand in which we will wake up other nations and they will support us and we will interweave and will only get stronger. We are the unexpected. We are the native people that no one ever expected to rise, because when they look at Hawaii, they say paradise. You know, the tourist destination. They say beautiful scenery and aloha spirit. Other countries that rise and other peoples that rise, they are expected to, but not here in Hawaii. And that's why the world is watching, because when the native people of a place say not this time, no more, you have taken almost everything we have, and if we allow you to build on the most sacred without attempting to stop that, we may as well just lay down as a native people and say, take everything. If you take the most sacred, what will we have left? So out of that knowing and out of that refusal to do that this time, the people around the world turned their heads and said, in Hawaii, the native people, who would have known? It is the time for Hawaii, because this is where aloha lives, true aloha. This is where we are standing in a manner where we cannot afford to be angry. We cannot be outraged. We cannot be violent, because we cannot stand in that way, because these generations are going to have to stand after us. The Mauna is not the only issue we have. In Hawaii, we have every issue everyone else has, but we're on a little pinhead here. So the Mauna is training us on how to stand in a manner that will take us from this mountain into our own communities and stand in a way that we never would have thought we could. Because when it's their turn to stand, we are going to have to be the examples for them on how to do it. And that's why the keiki are here standing in the same lines. They are learning how to stand in kapu aloha. What does that mean? In a ceremonial manner, with our prayers, with our chants, with our dances, with our integrity, with every value we ever learned we came from in our Kanaka Maoli way of being. And as we stand in that way, there will be no turning back. And we will stand strong, and we will be the pillars, the guardians, the stewards, and we will stand as mountains, unshakable.
So, pretty strong, actually, when you look at it. It is many faceted. It isn't just about religion. It's also about culture and history and colonialism and so on. It's a very, very confused situation in a way. But this is very recent, and the issue is not resolved yet. And the delay has been going on for several years of building this huge, I said 16-story, it's 18-story telescope. It's really, really huge. So if you were the governor, what would you do? What would you do? There are scientists. Why is it so important? Because of the uniqueness of the site, because of the possibilities that that telescope can bring in terms of discovery. But there's more to it than that. It will also bring jobs to the area, and also will enable, there'll be scholarships for kids in school to learn more about science, to get into university and so on. So there's a lot of benefit, in one sense, to the island, but then there's this whole issue of the sacredness of the land. He said 13 telescopes. There's actually 12. One was decommissioned, but there are 12 operating telescopes there. So here you are, you're the governor, and you're in the middle of this whole thing. This is a billions-dollar project bringing to the island to benefit the island. It's incredibly important scientifically, and yet you've got the native people saying, don't do it, no more. And they're blocking the road. What would you do? You have an answer, right?
Yeah. I think respect and relationship with people is far more important than technological advances in this circumstance. If there is an alternative site, I think it should be sought after. It's their most sacred place, and so yeah, I would respect the people. It's just out of it's such a culture of honor, and putting it there, if it would cause that much separation and hurt through generations against them, I just would not see the scientific advances as being benefits to the place or the people or anything like that. I would say possibly doing things with education, where you're explaining more why this technology would be beneficial, what it's for. You can always do things like that, where you're honoring and meeting the people in the way that they feel respected and honored, that it's not a brainwashing thing, it's not a you guys are dumb and you don't understand, so we're going to educate you thing. It's a meeting them at their level, wanting to honor their culture, honor them as a people, to present what this is in the full way that they are able to see. But they seem pretty solid about it because it is such a sacred site.
Yep.
So I think within that, relationships with the people are far more important. And I would not do it. I would look for an alternative site.
Okay, so Catherine's point here is that it has to be resolved. Somebody has to give in, somebody has to be respected. What do you think?
One of the things that struck me was that the guy said that each time they put a new telescope in, he said it's gonna be the last one.
Yeah.
And so I think if I was the governor in 1968 when the first one was put down, I would be like, okay, I think we've never done this before. We can reach a compromise. I'm sure, I would be okay with maybe trying to arrange with them, okay, let's try to put like a telescope somewhere. But now that there's been 12 of them up, and there's still this ongoing problem of they've never lived up to their promises, they've never said this is the last one, they've always built more. I think at some point then it's not in, it's right for the indigenous people to say that they're probably not in goodwill and saying this is the last one, and thus there's a distrust there that's backed up with experience and truth. And so then I think if I was the governor, I would hope that there's okay, well, everybody, all the other governors before me did not follow through, weren't honest. Their reactions are rational, and thus I think it'd be fair to also then honor them and not do it. If there was some possible alternative, like knocking down 3 other telescopes and putting a big one in their place, and that's like not as ideal for the science, but then at least like, hey, this is already land that we've kind of taken, so then at least we can kind of do something with that. Then I think there could be something. I'm sure those telescopes are there for some legitimate reason, but I'm also thinking if there's 12 and they're roughly the same, then maybe there's not need for 12 of them for if you're gonna put one big one down. So I would say just based on the compromising promises of the past, then I would honor the people and not allowing this to be built on top of their mountain.
Any other thoughts here? This is, I mean, if you were a legislator, you've got to think carefully about, respecting culture, honoring the science as well at the same time. Any other thoughts? Because this is really, this is not theoretical. This is the real thing. I mean, decisions have to be made. Right now, everything is at a standstill. And in the end, something's going to happen. And probably the scientists will give up and go somewhere else. Maybe. We don't know. Any other thoughts? I mean, is there a compromise, do you think? Could there be some way through dialogue of moving forward? Do you think? That doesn't involve win, lose, win. What do you think?
I think the point that you made was really good, actually, of something of, do we actually need all of the other telescopes?
That's a good point.
It's a really good point.
It's the only kind of, in my eye, it's the only kind of somewhat obvious compromise that can be, because if you've already done this amount of damage to them, and then it's like, well, at least let's just use what we've already taken rather than try to take even more, because it's clearly just they're close to the ride, and at this point, they're full on protesting, so you don't want to aggravate them more. And so I think the only kind of suitable compromise, unless you go somewhere else, but it sounds like yours isn't another place, then it's to at least knock down some of yours and build on top of them.
Well, there was one key point, and it connects with what you both said, and that is, they said this one is going to be built on a prominent site, where not where the others are, but in another place, even more sacred than the part where. So that now we're talking about desecrating more land, than originally was thought. Any other thoughts? This is, I like this discussion. It's very interesting.
Okay.
Is there anyone? Yes. And
for me here, I think the government also has to be able to understand the belief system of the people. Education is also needed to be able to make the people see the reason why those developments are coming to their area. I think when that is done, instead of just coming and imposing on them, there's a belief system already in that community. I think it's to be able to work on their belief system and make them see the need of and the benefit of the development that the government is trying to bring to the community. That's my thoughts.
very clearly located. 4 rivers, the Euphrates, and so on. Okay. Science says no. 10,000 people in the Rift Valley of Kenya. And from there, they can actually chart by genetics everywhere that the people went. There's an amazing movie about that called The Journey of Man. And it shows how, from that first 10,000, what we would call Homo sapiens sapiens, the first truly human humans, how that they moved out, they moved south, they moved up into Europe, into Asia, into India, eventually into Australia. And that is the story, and genetics tells that story through thousands and thousands of blood samples that have been taken. That's not the biblical story. So that's one of the places where I don't know what to do with that. Second would be the origin of life. How did life begin? How do you end up with an amazing, sophisticated molecule like DNA that we'll talk about later, with all the information built into it from nothing? Well, not nothing, but simple materials, chemicals. How do you get from chemicals to DNA? The Bible would say, people might interpret the Bible to say, well, it was a miracle. God stepped in, boom. There didn't used to be life, now there is life. I don't know. Some scientists say it came from somewhere else. Actually, that we got it from some other planet because it appeared fairly suddenly. But then you don't answer the question because then it's just one planet back. How do you answer that? We have no answer to that. And there's a tension there because in Christianity we'd say, well, God did it. That's all we need to know. Yeah. But scientists would say, no, that's not enough. How? Yes, maybe he did do it, but how? How did he do it? So those are the kind of things I struggle with still, honestly. There are some others too, but those are 2 particular ones. So I thought I would give this to you because this does indicate to you where young people are. Your generation, actually. This is, like I said, 22-year-olds to 32-year-olds, I believe. What we would call the millennial generation. And these are 6 reasons given by, this is several thousand people. And it is American, I have to admit that it's American, but this is probably fairly universal, I don't know. But this is why young people this is the reasons they're giving why they're leaving the church. So we could go through the others, that's a whole story in itself, but this is the one that I thought was very interesting and surprising. The church is antagonistic to modern science, out of step, not up to date, only cares about creation and evolution. That's about the only thing they want to talk about. And that really frustrates a lot of people. Now, the other ones, that's a discussion for another time maybe, but here's a little bit more of what they said about science. Okay, this is really interesting. Christians are too confident that they know all the answers when it comes to science. God said it, I read it, that settles it, no more questions. So they're sometimes too confident. 3 out of 10 young adults with a Christian background feel that churches are out of step with the scientific world we live in. That's serious, actually, when you think about it. Another one, quote, embrace the perception that Christianity is anti-science. How did we ever get to that point?
Of course, that.
Yeah. But it's somewhere embedded in our Christian tradition. I don't know, maybe it goes all the way back to Galileo. I don't know. Nearly the same proportion said they are being turned off by the creation versus evolution debate. I think I'd be on that side too, actually. I'm tired of the debate. But the research shows that many science-minded Christians are struggling to find ways of staying faithful to their beliefs and to their professional calling in science-related industry. So we've got that whole issue too. People that are interested in science, want to go into science, don't always feel encouraged to do that by the church. And if they do, then they're regarded with a little bit of suspicion. Like, what are you doing? So I think this is very interesting, and it really points something out. I mean, a class like this is the kind of thing we need to be aware of. We need to be addressing as well, you know, and we need to speak out about this being the church's attitude towards science. As I said, it really kind of struck me. Just I didn't expect to see those kind of results, but that's what the statistics seem to show. We won't go into creation and evolution unless you really, really want to go there. Have you talked about that at all? Creation and evolution? Okay, not in this school.
No.
Okay. I just wanted to at least tell you what the situation is in the church, okay? There are, in fact, 3 opinions in the church. So I have a little diagram here. I like diagrams to show you. These are the 3 positions that Bible-believing, evangelical, full-on Christian people take as far as the issue of origins. It's really about the origin of everything. And these are the 3 positions. This is the first one, which would be called the young earth position. And that's the position of the man that you heard in the video I showed, where he's basically taking the Bible as a historical and scientific textbook and creating a model based on an exact and literal reading of the scriptures. So 6 literal days, and then you calculate by generations when that was. So it's like, I know, 4004 BC. It's based exactly on simply calculating based on how you read the scriptures. In their minds, as the guy said, people say I'm interpreting. I'm not interpreting, I'm just reading it. You know, the point is when you read something, you interpret it. You can't help it. It's just what it is. Anyway, here's their model, which would mean only a few thousand years for the age of the universe, the whole universe. And that everything, all of this was the beginning of everything before the flood. It would be a worldwide flood, which is a pretty amazing phenomenon if you think about it, because if it's going to cover some of the mountaintops, imagine how much water that is. Yeah, and then imagine that around the whole Earth, what that would do to just the rotation of the Earth, let alone anything else, just that level of water. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting sort of making an opinion now, but just to talk about a worldwide flood, and you've got to talk about physics and geology. A, where did all the water come from? And then B, could you really cover the Earth all the way up to the top of the mountains, like Everest? Or maybe you say there weren't big mountains in those days. And I don't know. There's you have to do a lot of talking scientifically. And then after the flood, everything is wiped out. And then we have a few families, and then we have, I guess, species and everything happening in a very, very short time here. So we're talking populating the whole Earth, and then all the species appearing in a couple of thousand years. That's quite spectacular. This is important. These are arrows saying this is where God steps in and does something. So we can always do that because we can say that's impossible scientifically, but God can do miracles, which is true. He certainly can. If he wanted to, he could do this. Yes.
Is it not possible that for a few families they could populate the Earth and the same with the animals?
Yeah, I think, well, it would have to be pretty fast.
Yeah.
When you think about it. Because they have got to get all the way down to Australia. Yeah. They're going to have to be different ethnic groups. Mm-hmm. You know, that would be, yeah, there are some thoughts about that. They say that the 3 sons of Noah represent 3 major groups, ethnic groups. But there isn't a whole lot of scientific evidence for that.
I was just wondering if it was actually a scientific impossibility or not.
Well, nothing's impossible, you know, especially if you say God did it. You have to worry about it. Anyway, so that's the highly interventionist and very recent, and in many ways counter to what we know of geology and physics and so on. So that's that position. Then there's this one, which is called progressive creation. And that idea is it's not a young Earth, it's an old Earth, but that the species, the various biological species, appear by divine intervention. So species do not, one species did not become another species. The species are pretty well defined, and they turned up by God's divine fiat, really. He actually brought the species into being. Sometimes they go extinct, like this. Others but are related, but they're not the same. So the idea is that species are unique. There is modification within a species. So you get a big dog, small dog, you know, brown dog, white dog, so on. But they're still dogs. They don't become a fish. And they don't become a lion, you know. So the idea is that species they stay as species, and there isn't anything jumping over from one to the other. That's that position. So there is a certain amount of divine intervention here, and especially when you talk about humans, because humans are unique, and you would say one of these miraculous interventionist events was God creating human beings, separate and different. It's a different species, and as he did with the early species, he did with man at some point or another, with Adam and Eve. So that's progressive. And then there's this position, which is also represents quite a number of evangelical Christians now. It's called evolutionary creation. That sounds like like you can't put those two words together. And part of that is the church has told us, you know, that it's got to be one or the other. And so we had this either or thing. But actually, this is a position that says that the theory of evolution scientifically explains everything being formed, including species coming from other species. Now, again, I will talk a little bit more about this when we talk about DNA. But that would be the picture, the pattern, which says that there was one original first cell. And then from that first cell came everything else. What it doesn't answer, of course, is this, right? How do we get the first cell? The first cell, even the simplest of cells, is incredibly complicated, incredibly sophisticated. You saw a little bit just from that little movie of how intricate every part is, how everything works together. How do you get a cell like that at the beginning from just raw materials? Difficult to say. Now down here, humans are evolving from lower forms of life, but they are not the same. And that is, some people really think that this position says that we're just like monkeys that have grown up, you know, or something like that. But it doesn't say that at all. This position is very strong in saying that humans are unique. They are unique. How they came to be is one thing. What they are is something else. And in that sense, none of these people would say, oh, we're just like grown-up chimpanzees or something. Not at all. So those are three positions that you find in the church today. And this one is the most kind of aggressive in terms of their position. And they really do feel that you could still be saved without believing this, but you might be on the edge if you don't go down this road. And they have some theology for that, and they're really saying that if you don't believe that God miraculously brought everything into being, then how can you believe the rest of the scriptures? where there are miraculous events like the resurrection, like the virgin birth, like some of the miracles in the Old and New Testament. They're really saying, if you don't believe that God could do this, how can you believe that he did the resurrection or he did the virgin birth? They call it the slippery slope. Disregard this, and then what are you going to do about the resurrection? What are you going to do about the virgin birth? So there is that contention there. So I think that was all I wanted to say. I think I'll give you one final thought about this, and that is, I have a little diagram, this one. Okay. Often people are not talking about the same thing. They often talk about creation versus evolution, right? But you know, this is a worldview school. Creation is not a scientific theory. It's a worldview. It's a worldview that says that, like I think in that definition that ChatGPT gave, it said, we believe there's a God, he created everything. And the scripture itself says that. By faith, it says in Hebrews, we believe. So it's not a scientific theory at all. It's a belief. It's something we commit ourselves to. Can we prove it? No, we cannot. But we accept it because of the one who said it. Okay? So that's a worldview, really. Over here is a scientific theory, the scientific theory of evolution. This theory is not the same as this in any sense. This is a worldview, this is a scientific theory. That means this theory of evolution, it will change as time goes on. The more we discover, that's what happens with theories. The more we discover, the more we modify our theory to fit the data that we've got. So it's a moving thing. The theory of evolution that Darwin originally put together is unrecognizable to the way we look at it today. Only because we've got more and more evidence, more and more experiments that have been done that make the whole theory more precise. And it is the theory of today. It's the accepted theory by 96% of biologists around the world, Christian and non-Christian, as to be the basis for life as we know it today. Is it correct? I can't say that one way or the other. At the moment, the evidence is very strong. And it is a theory. So the problem is this. Sometimes people take the scientific theory and they make a worldview out of it. This is key right here. It's not evolution that we're bothered by. It's evolutionism. It's an ism, an ideology based on this, but not actually scientific. It's saying if we think things happen the way they did, therefore we don't need a God, we don't need miracles, we don't need religion. It's a conclusion made by starting with this and building a theory. It's rationalism, secularism, humanism. It's all in here, evolutionism. And evolution became a weapon for this ideology. And it was never meant to be that. Darwin himself was a God believer. So that's dangerous when you take a scientific theory and try and make an ideology out of it. But it's also dangerous if you do the other thing. Take an ideology and try and make a scientific theory out of it. And that's what we call creation science. It's this model that I showed you there, the recent Earth, Noah's flood and so on and so on. It's trying to make a scientific model out of what was really a worldview. And that's dangerous too, because this then, if it's really a scientific theory, it can change based on the evidence. But the people that take this view don't allow for any kind of scientific inquiry or challenge to this. This is right, this is what we've decided, and they spend a lot of their time trying to discredit anything to do with science that would disagree with their position. Does that make sense? So it's dangerous to go from here to here, it's dangerous to go from here to here. It's apples and oranges. And you can't compare apples with oranges. You compare apples with apples, yeah.
Yeah. I would say I don't fully understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I do in many areas and places.
Yeah.
But where would be the difference between what you're saying, and then also that whole thing of you can't cross religion and science? Like that's partially what I'm hearing, and I don't understand the difference of what you're saying.
Well, that's what this is saying. Don't try and make science out of something that's actually an ideology or a belief system.
Right.
Similarly here, don't take a scientific theory and try to make an ideology out of it. So that's crossing lines you shouldn't cross. And you're using the methodology in the wrong place for the wrong reason.
What could be a good solution in that? Because maybe I'm not fully understanding it, but if there is something of creation, should that not be tried to be proved with science? Like if they're intermingled and overlapping.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
This
question clear.
No, I mean that evolutionary creation position is trying to say that is that yes, we have this mechanism, but God is the author of it all. More than the author, he didn't just start it; he actually made it go the way it did. So that's the the position they would take.
Yeah.
Whereas these people would say, no, anything that doesn't agree with our understanding of the Bible is wrong. So all the evidence for an ancient universe is wrong in their mind. And so on and so on and so on. So, okay. So that's, So that's as much as I want to talk about, because you could spend all day talking about those kinds of things, but I won't. But here's a thing, we've got about 10 minutes here.
Yeah.
This is just a little postscript to something I said before, and that is about the Bible as a scientific textbook. So my question is, when the Bible speaks about things scientific, is it correct? This is, we're on interesting ground here when I say that. And let me give you some examples. I want you to think about these, each of them. But Mark 4, verse 31. That's Jesus speaking. And he says, look at the mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds. But like your faith, this can grow into a big, big tree. Right? That's what it says. Well, guess what? The mustard seed is not the smallest of all seeds. The orchid seed is smaller than the mustard seed. Whoa, so Jesus, he didn't tell the truth. Don't know how to say it in a polite way, but what he said was not scientifically actually correct. So you have to think about that. Did he make a mistake? I don't think so. I mean, he's divine, right? And what about the second one? This is, again, I think Jesus speaking, right? As a seed falls into the ground and dies, and then eventually comes up to life again, so I will go into the earth, I will die, but I will then come back to life. Well, guess what? Seeds don't die when they go into the earth. If they did, they would be dead. Otherwise, there'd be a resurrection every time a seed produced a plant. It's pretty amazing. The seed is dormant. You put it in the ground and the conditions are such that it will then get a signal to be able to grow.
Yeah.
Right, Jesus said that, but it's not correct. This is a bit depressing. But what about this one? This is Paul. So this is not Jesus. This is Paul saying, remember, he says, at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow, right? Things on the earth, above the earth, and under the earth. Aha. So who are these people under the earth who are waiting for Jesus to come and speak to them. What's under anyway anymore when we think about the earth as a ball? What does it mean under the earth?
Is this rhetoric or do you are rhetorical, or do you want us to respond?
But in a minute we'll get to a response, because I think there are some answers here. But it's really worth thinking about. I have to admit that when I first came across this, I was very disturbed. Like, I always believed the Bible would be true in every respect. And in science, it ought to be saying something that's correct. And here I am going through these and finding places where apparently, scientifically, it's not correct. Now, we could talk about the next one, Isaiah 54:1. It talks about barrenness. And it's saying that whenever a woman cannot have a child, it's her fault. It's not the man, it's the woman. She cannot have children. Well, again, biologically, that's not correct. And then the next one, our favorite one, Psalm 93, verse 2, the earth is fixed, it cannot be moved. And that's what got Galileo into trouble and ended up in prison, or house arrest, because he said, no, the earth moves. The sun is in the middle, everything goes around it. And then the last one, Genesis 1, the story of creation, where it talks about separating the waters from the waters. What are the waters up there that we're being separated from? I mean, people argue that and say, well, that's the clouds because they're full of rain, but that's not what it says. It says waters above, waters below, they separate. So we've got a few examples here where scientifically they don't quite add up. Now, we can answer one of them this way. Okay. Yeah. I knew Graham was going that direction. So I beat you to it.
That's fine. You're the teacher. What am I teach? I do.
But this is the view of the, you've probably seen this before, but this is the world as it was at the time when the Bible was written. Different worldview. And now it makes perfect sense about people under the earth. In the underworld, that's where the departed spirits go, right? It also makes perfect sense about separating the waters from the waters, because you've got water up here, one ocean, and water down here. And this is a solid dome made of something, and it has you hang the sun and the moon in it, so these are hanging on the dome, and then on top of that you have windows. And when it rains, the windows open, right?
It opens up the heavens.
Yes, you know that scripture, is it in Malachi, where it talks about opening the windows of heaven and raining down the blessing.
That's based off this worldview.
Yeah, well, it makes pretty good sense when you look at this. If that's the way they saw the world at the time, it begins to make some sense. But what about some of the others where the science is not quite what would you think? How do we deal with that?
I don't remember exactly what Alice said. We had this discussion. The Bible is true. Or what was it?
Accurate. The
accurate.
Is it accurate or is it true?
Yeah, there's a difference. I don't remember articulate exactly how he put it forward. That there's a difference between being accurate and being true.
Like it's perfectly it's fully full of the authorship of God, but yet that also means that some of it, to all that we know, is not necessarily the same. Like, for example, mustard seed. My interpretation would be Jesus was talking to the people he was talking about,
exactly.
and probably the small seed they knew was the mustard seed.
Yeah, for
now
them.
Later we know there's a smaller seed.
Right.
So
right.
In its time, he was helping people know, hey, this is the small seed, and they agreed. So, for instance.
And the same with the seed falling into the ground and dying. That was the culture of the time.
The seed falling into the ground goes dormant, as you said, and then it goes there.
Yeah.
So it's also what the Hebrew word dead or died means.
Yeah.
It's
Good
dormant,
point.
and it's just
In the Lazarus story, it says that Jesus was 3 days late to arriving because in their day they believed that the soul departed the body 3 days after the body died physically. And so then when Jesus came, he waited for 3 days to come to show that in their time Lazarus was fully dead. There was no doubt his soul left his body. So when he raises him again, that was to show that actually no, he fully raising from the dead. Like he didn't raise his soul, he raised the whole body.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a good thought.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that Jesus thought that the soul leaves the body after 3 days. It's just
Yeah, exactly.
you know, so it's not
Yeah.
Demonstrate.
It's not the same.
Well, there is the word that's used for a lot of this is accommodation. Accommodation. It means that Jesus accommodated to the culture of the time, even though he would know that it wasn't totally scientifically correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that is stunning in a way that he would do that, that he would be willing to speak in the science of the time, even though he knew that it wasn't entirely correct, for the sake of communicating something, a truth.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable, isn't it, when you think about it?
I mean, you take that further that, like, if he had to be, like, 100% factual all the time, then the Bible would indeed describe exactly how the world works.
Yes.
And that kind of defeats the point of, like, what we were talking about yesterday of God, hiding things.
Yeah.
Like,
it's interesting. Catherine.
That is, really interesting. I think it's also interesting to recognize that there are actually many verses in the Bible where scientists later found it and went, oh, the Bible told us this before we discovered it.
That's
and
true.
It is completely accurate. So I think actually it goes both ways. So,
It does.
Yeah, so for example, where Solomon talks about the springs in the seas at the bottom of the oceans, that wasn't discovered until, however many hundreds of thousands of years later. And yet, God knew that, and it's in the Bible in Solomon's time.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have both sides.
Oh, yeah. I think you were not here yesterday when we talked about the Big Bang Theory, because scientists believe that that the universe was eternal, had no beginning and no end. And then the science showed very clearly that there was a moment of creation.
Yeah.
And it is actually called that now. In science, it's called the moment of creation. That was not a happy thing for many scientists. They didn't like that idea. But it turned out there is a point. And then, of course, that has all kinds of theological things, and it's right there in the scriptures. In the beginning, God created. In the beginning was the Word. So there was a point of creation. Science has nothing to say about that. Science can say something about the microsecond after it all happened, but it cannot. It has no comment, or shouldn't have any comment, about the moment of creation. It's nothing. We don't have the. Yep, we're a little bit over, but thank you for giving me an extra 5 minutes. Maybe, Seema, we should give an extra 5 minutes at the other end and say, I don't know. I'll leave it up to you.
No, I think it's okay. We come back 11:45.
Do I?
Oh, surprise.
You can
Okay.
say hi. Hi, Badan. Yeah, they will let you know if you know.
Okay, you can go for it.
Can I go now?
Yeah, you can go, sorry.
It's okay. Normally, I would do community technology last, but I thought, let's do it now. And you'll just see some fun things, some technological things that really work in the majority world. And then tomorrow, we'll go into some more things about DNA and science, to end up with. So there'll be some more discussion tomorrow. I thought it might be nice to relax a little bit and see some stuff. So this is really just, just seeing what's going on. It's really very, very interesting. So here we go. Community technology and missions. And I think, let me see, I need to probably do the share thing. Okay, let me just go there. Okay, where are we? Okay. Should I be on Zoom now? Do we?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So I joined the meeting.
Is that a code?
I got this. But it's not a new meeting, right? It's,
Join. I will do it for you.
okay. I'm beginning to doubt my competence as a scientist and technology for this.
Me too.
I couldn't even get the coffee machine to work this morning.
Those things no one understands.
I pressed every button.
No one understands coffee machine.
And it went, I mean, I had tea instead. It was great. But you know, at the time, I pressed the button and it said calcium, whatever, you know. And it went into this thing where it was cleaning the whole machine for about 10 minutes. And then that was done. I pressed coffee, nothing. It just didn't do anything.
What time do you usually take your breakfast? Were you in the dining hall or in the hospital?
Upstairs in the hospitality area. But yesterday it was okay. I pressed the button.
It's not a normal coffee machine. It's no normal coffee machine.
Yeah, they just
It's a mystery.
sometimes like a normal.
Are we there now? Yeah. Okay, so I need to say share screen. All right. And then we can go to this one. Yeah, and then we'll just make it, okay, we'll make it big. Oh. Is this it? This is it?
Yeah.
And then
maybe you can stop sharing.
Stop sharing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you open the file?
Yep, it's there.
This is the one, right?
Yep, it's the one.
But too small.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, we can do this, I guess. No?
Maybe it's not working. Maybe you can close. I can reopen.
All right. Will it close? It won't close either. Oh, the joy of technology.
Yeah. Something. Close window. Which
Okay.
one? Can you open this one?
It is that one there. Yeah, that one. There we go.
Yeah, 5, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, can you?
And then we go to
slideshow, right?
Right. So down here.
Ah, perfect. Now you can.
And it includes sound. Did we ask for sound?
Zoom on. Oh, it's here.
Okay. And then share sound. Yeah. Here we go. Yes. Thank you, Simon. I have no idea what you just did.
Smart man. Smart man.
It's good to have him.
Yes. Yep. Well, my aim is to get the coffee machine to work tomorrow. You know, I think that would be important for my identity. Don't you think? And my self-worth.
That's fair.
I thought so.
Be humble once in a while too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, going back to our diagram here, remember, we talked about these, and we've been working a lot in this area already, Revelation over here. And we may come to this, just see how our time goes tomorrow, but I want to look at this one over here, which is the idea that technology is a vehicle for being able to produce justice and peace. And people don't think about it much like that, but it really is. It's a restoration thing. And that's what makes me very excited to be part of it too. So it's about shalom. We use that word a lot, but that word is a big word. It has in it the meaning of justice and peace. And I believe that science and tech can be part of that. It's a vehicle for that purpose. We in the West tend to be fix-it people. You know, we see something that's wrong and we fix it. And that's unfortunate because I think in doing that, we actually paralyze people from the majority world sometimes. There's a lot of discussion about that these days. There's a book you may have heard of called When Helping Hurts. And it's very challenging to read it. I read it and thought, I need to give up.
I read that.
I read it too.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you get real depressed about it. Like, nothing I do is going to be of any worth at all. But I think that in the end, you begin to get a little creative and you realize there are ways, but I'm afraid that most of the kind of humanitarian work that's been done over the years has done more damage than benefit. And that's, yeah.
Talking about the book, I don't know if you read Something Need to Change by David. I forgot his name.
No.
That's also a wonderful book. We talk about Himalayas, and I mean, maybe that's why.
No, but this is the kind of thing that we really need to grapple with.
Yeah.
Because we're not thinking enough. It's not just the American or Western culture, it's also the church. And we send short-term teams out. I mean, I'm not against short-term teams.
Yeah.
You know, but there is a right context for a short-term team, and there's a wrong context.
Yeah, definitely.
And I believe we're growing in Wyoming in understanding that too. I'm actually quite encouraged by that. Anyway, so here we are talking about this. This is the diagram. I think it comes from that book. If it doesn't come from that book, it comes from another book that they've written called Becoming Whole. And I would really recommend that book too. It's broader than community development.
Is it better?
Yeah,
I think that's better.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sina.
It's broader, but it's talking about the whole issue of being whole persons and a gospel that's whole as well. That's why I just finished reading it. Again, it's a bit depressing sometimes, like, oh my gosh, half of what I did wasn't really doing it the right way. But they just give some really good principles. But this is the diagram they use, which I think is kind of helpful. It says, you know, that we need a relationship with God. That's pretty obvious. This is all about relationships. We need a relationship with other people. We also need a relationship with ourselves. Counseling is really all about that. It's really having a right view of yourself, right? But there's this fourth one, which we don't always think about, and that is our relationship with creation. We talked about creation, it's a wonderful thing, but how do we as individuals relate to creation? What are our responsibilities? Is there reconciliation that we need here? Have we stewarded our creation well or not? And how can we live as people that honor and steward the creation that God gave us? So we've got, in a sense, 4 relationships here to think about. And we certainly think about this quite a bit, and probably about this. And now we're beginning to think more about this, but this one is still one that we're kind of working on to really understand what that really means. So it's a reconciliation thing, and I just put words here as a word to kind of express that. Our relationship here with God, intimacy, we use that word quite a bit. Our relationship with others, community. Our relationship with ourselves, which is humility. You know the word humility means to be known for who you really are. That's the true meaning of humility. It's not like, oh, I'm a worm. You know, it's not that at all. It's being known for who you are, which means not bigger than you are and not smaller than you are, but who you are. That's humility. And then last of all, stewardship. How are we going to steward creation in such a way that we can bring reconciliation and wholeness into communities, our own and the world. So there's a scripture about it, you know, reconciliation. We are Christ's ambassadors to bring reconciliation. We are ambassadors of reconciliation. We are asked to be that. So reconciling with God, but reconciling with our neighbors, and reconciling with this creation that God has given us. So we use these terms: appropriate technology, community technology, sustainable. You know, these are the buzzwords that we hear these days, but they're real, and they are areas that we need to address as Christians. What does that actually mean? So let's just kind of do a little bit of a tour around some of the areas where technology might make a difference. And the first one, you know, because I'm working on water projects, I sort of put that on the top of the list: water and sanitation. And I mean, this is the kind of thing you see anywhere when you travel. And I've even given talks to people that do this. I mean, I don't have to tell them or explain to them what this is all about because they do it. When I'm in the developed world, I have to explain, and sometimes I have people put a thing on their heads with water in it and then walk around the building. And they barely make it around the building. There are some secrets about how to do it as well, and how to do it without using your hands. Anyway, so it's kind of intriguing, but the point is it's also challenging because we know what this means. It means that probably women are walking maybe 2, 3, 4 kilometers a day in the morning to get water to a source which may or may not be good, but that's going to be the water for the day. And maybe they'll have to go back in the evening and do it again to have enough water for the whole family. But there is a sort of a justice issue here. It's almost always the women that have to do it. They risk some danger because they go very early in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning when it's dark, and they're on a path where people could attack them possibly. And then long term, there is an effect on their spine because it's compacting their spine so much that in the end, they often end up with spine problems later on in life. That's not right. This is not as it should be. And it gets to be even more of a challenge when you think about children. This is from China, and this is what children have to do sometimes, is to carry the water in the morning before they go to school. And again, there's a challenge to that. I met a young lady in Rwanda, and I asked her about water, and she said, well, yeah, my job in the family is to get water in the morning. I have to walk 3 kilometers to get the water, and then I walk to school after that. And then in the evening, I walk back from school, and I go to the water again, twice a day.
It is, I mean, I'm just so enjoying because that's my heart. Like, I really see when people don't have water because maybe it's something reality in my family, or like 4 years back, my brother got married. And in Hindu families, or like even in India, I could say that marriage is like so many people. And we were so concerned about when we have guests, how do we gonna get water? And I remember that my youngest brother and some cousin, they had this like holding bucket and fetching, and my youngest brother was like, oh, that's so painful. And it looks like, oh, that's how it is. We accept that kind of, we need water, so we fetch. But it's just so painful, yeah.
I know, and I just feel that personally, it's an injustice. It's not right. It's really not right. One time I went to a conference in Los Angeles. I got off the plane and I had to get a limo to get to the hotel. They provided, but we were driving, and the driver was from the Philippines. And he said, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm going to a water conference. I'm really concerned about this kind of issue, justice issue. And he was very quiet. We were driving and he wasn't saying anything. And then I noticed in the mirror, he was crying. And I said, I'm sorry, did I say something I shouldn't have said? He said, no. He said, I was the boy that used to get the water.
Wow.
And he said, thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, just adding something on, sorry, it's like that kind of technology, that's what I would support. Like that science that brings value, that reduce people's pain. Yeah, yes for that. Like, absolutely.
I can maybe I can show you a little bit about Water for Life. Would that be okay? Just a little bit, so you can see the kind of thing we do, because it's directly related to this. I think I say our small part, Water for Life. I'm not sure what happens if I do that. It didn't come up. So what do I have to do? What do I have to do, Simon? I have to stop sharing.
Yeah. And then reshare.
And then reshare.
No,
and there it is.
Yes.
Okay. I'm getting better at it, you have to admit. Ta-da! There we go. That's good. So this is an organization that we formed about almost 15 years ago now, I think. And it's separate from YWAM. It's not a YWAM ministry. And the reason for that is because we employ some people, and also we work in areas where we couldn't be a missions organization. We would be run out of town quickly. In fact, sometimes when we do these work, I have outreach leaders saying, hey, could we come to your village and maybe, play guitars and worship in your village? And I'm like, well, you could, except that the leader of the village told me to have guns. They all have guns. That's what he said to me, because I went to the village and I said, what would you feel about bringing, like a worship team here, a missions organization? He said, well, look over there on the shelf. And I said, yeah. He said, what's there? And I said, oh, it's a gun. He said, that's my answer. So that was part of the reason we formed Water for Life, was to be able to go places that we couldn't go otherwise. It's kind of amusing. Oh, by the way, every one of the outreach leaders said, yeah, I think the Lord's leading us to another place. Probably not there. Anyway, so here are happy kids. I love these pictures. I don't agree with putting pictures of, swollen bellies and all of that kind of stuff, because I think that's exploiting people. You don't ask their permission to show them in a very embarrassing and sad situation. So in our organization, I just don't allow those kind of pictures. This is a happy picture. This is Fiji, where they got water for the first time in the village. So our project this is our mission statement. We don't do the work. We help people develop their own systems and their own water sources for their communities. It's a long path because people don't want to do that. Unfortunately, most communities hear about people coming from the developed world and they just want to put their hands out and say, do the work for us, and then go away and pay for it too. And leave us some cash when you leave. And that's sad. We won't do that. We won't go unless we're invited. And we won't go unless they agree to these principles. Basically, you do the work. We don't do the work. You pay something, usually 10 to 15% of the cost. We don't do that. And last of all, this is a long-term relationship. This is not a kamikaze, kind of like in, fix, and then move. It's not that at all. We want relationships with the people. And that's what we've been doing for these years. So we actually got incorporated officially as a nonprofit in 2007. So we are an official nonprofit and an NGO. So our founder is this man who actually founded the University of the Nations. Howard Malmsteen is his name. He's the one that got me involved with YWAM. He left his job as a professor at a university in America, and he is a chemist. And so I knew him professionally, and then I found out that he had gone to YWAM, and people were saying he must have lost his mind because he's gone to be a hippie in Hawaii. But that wasn't true. So he founded the university, but he always had a tremendous heart for water. He's a very Scandinavian person, very controlled, but whenever he talks about water, he teared up because he cared so much. So I kind of worked under him for the last year of his life. And we worked with this man. So we didn't go to the West for our answers. We went to the non-West. We went actually to Indonesia. And this is a man whose name is Rus Alit. And he is the one, there's a long story here, but basically God took him from his village as a Hindu to his brother who led him to Christ. He went from his village in Indonesia to New Zealand, knowing no English at all. He did a Bible degree and then came back to the village to find that there had been a military coup and all of his brothers had been murdered. They'd been killed and put into a grave. So he came back. He was the only one left. Oh my gosh. And he said, God must have a purpose for me. If I'd been spared, something he has for me. So he began to go to the villages with Bibles. He had a sack and he took the Bibles to the village. Guess what? they booted him out of every house. They didn't want Bibles at all. They literally, physically threw him out of the house. He'd come in and say, I'm here, and they'd say, what do you want? He'd say, I've got a Bible for you, and they'd say, out the door. So he got very depressed about it, and he asked a Roman Catholic priest, friend of his, what do I do? How do I get the gospel to these people? And the priest said very wisely, what do they need? He said, well, they need Jesus. He said, I know, but what else do they need? He said, I don't know. I'll go ask. So he went around the villages and said, what do you need? And over again, they said, water. Water is a problem here. It's contaminated. And we've got people sick and dying all the time. So he came back to the priest and he said, well, the answer is water. And the priest said, well, then meet their need. He said, how do I do? I have no experience, no training, nothing. All I have is a Bible degree. And so the priest said one word, learn, learn. So he went away and he actually began to think about it, and he discovered he has a talent for building equipment very simply that can be used for water and sanitation. He's doing it to this day. He's still doing it. He became our mentor for Water for Life because he works where in a context that we wanted to work in too. I won't go into all the details here, but he has produced equipment. Here we go. Equipment to catch water off the roof and other places. Equipment to store it, building tanks, moving it, hand pumps, and filtering it as well, purifying it. All of this, he just has this amazing mind to be able to invent these things, and they're always appropriate to majority war situations. I used to go and sit with him in Indonesia, and he would make me make stuff, and I would so often mess up, He would say, okay, look, there's a pump here that we need to fix. The valve is not working properly. And I'd say, okay, well, let's go to the hardware store and get a replacement. It's like, Derek, there is no hardware store here. I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And he'd say 2 words, look around, look around. He'd say, find something that will work. That's what I did. So I had to unlearn my, my first world way of thinking and think what it is, and it's a thing that people don't even realize, is how creative people are in the majority of the world. They have to be, because they don't have much resource. And so you've got to go with what you've got. You've got to be creative. So he's built all kinds of stuff. I love going and seeing what he's building. Can you guess what this is? What is it?
Water catchment. Water catchment tank.
Nope. Nope.
Is it storage?
See this on the top, okay? It's a black tank.
Is it storing water? Shower.
Partly. Shower. Is that Shane? You said that? That's right. This is actually a shower unit. The water is heated up by the sun, and then you can take a shower.
That's smart.
Pretty good. And this may sound a bit controversial. It's also a toilet at the same time. So it's all in one. But it works. You can have one for women and one for men. It really works well. So and he makes big sand filters, or what he goes through like that. I like to show this one because I helped build this. You got it right. It actually works. But here's the result of all of that. I mean, it's a long story here, but he found that going back to the villages with serving them in water issues, they welcomed them in to the house because he wasn't waving a Bible at them. And gradually, people began to ask him, why are you doing this? And it's a question we get all the time when we do water projects. Why are you doing this? And we say, because we love you. And they say, why would you love us? You don't even know who we are. And we say, well, we love you because God loves you. And that starts a conversation. It's very interesting. Anyway, this happened. These 2 people are were from Hindu families, different families. They both were kicked out of their house for being Christian. They both ended up in churches, living in the basement of churches. That was all they could do. But they found each other and they got married. And then they have a little baby. And this is the very, very first Christian baptism, dedication in that whole area. Everybody came, everybody. And they were fascinated to watch what was going on. They had no idea what was going on as they did the dedication. But so I think he told me there are more than 150 people now that have become Christians by taking this approach, by serving them with water.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? It's so cool. I love it.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I'll show you we have a lot of projects and I can't show them all, but I'll show you a couple. There's this little island called Fanning Island. There's Hawaii up there, which is pretty remote. There are these 3 islands here in the middle of the Pacific. They are really remote. And in the middle is one called Fanning Island. Has about 2,000 or 3,000 people on it, and a very, very bad water situation because the ocean is pushing into the under the ground, under the earth, and it's contaminating the fresh water and making it salty. They have no recourse, and so they're drinking salty water. It's not as salty as the ocean, but it's brackish, and it tastes terrible. So when they make tea, they add huge amounts of sugar to be able to cover the taste of the salt. So now they have blood pressure problems, high blood pressure because of the salt, and diabetes as a result of the sugar. So it's really quite serious. So this is the island. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful place, but they are really lacking basic amenities. So this is the kind of well they have, highly contaminated. Animals get in there, they're very bad. And as a result, kids are often infected. There's no clinic on the island. Well, there's clinics, but no doctor, no medications. So if you get sick, you die, basically. When I took a team there, I had to tell them that if they get sick, they get sick. And I can't do anything about it. So I made them write a kind of a waiver to say, don't hold me responsible. Anyway, what we did was we said, the water down here is bad. The water up here is pretty good, the rain. So why can't we catch rainwater? Nobody had ever thought about that before. It rains practically every day. So we began to suggest to them they build storage tanks next to big buildings that have roofs, long big roofs. And so I think this was one. This is a team I took there, and they're putting a gutter on a big, big roof, which was actually part of a school. It's a meeting house. It looked like this. So we were able to build these tanks. The people did it. We didn't actually do it. I think I have a picture. Yeah, there's the whole group. So it was a team. I took the team. So we have me, British, Canadian, Japanese, New Zealand, American. So there's a multicultural team. The rest are the workers from that area. They're the ones that actually built everything. We didn't do it for them. And she's the principal of the school where we built the thing. So the point of this is that we encouraged them to build the tanks. They ended up building tanks on all the clinics and all the schools on the island.
Wow.
So it's a pretty successful project on the whole. Let me just, I can tell you about Rwanda, Cambodia. Here's Cambodia. We've been producing or helping them to build these filters. I'm sorry if this is a bit technical, but it gives you some ideas about how you can be, I don't know what the word is, ingenious, and come up with ideas. This is actually a sewer pipe repurposed to be a sand filter. So this is full of sand. and gravel at the bottom, gravel at the top. We pour a bucket of water in the top, and it goes through the sand and comes out here. And this is called a bio-sand filter. It means that it's alive. It's actually got organisms in there that come from the dirty water. They make their home in the sand, and then when you put more water in there, they eat all the bad things in the water, and the water comes out clean. I don't know how that happens. It's really fascinating.
My DTS, I was trained to do that. So we built like 2 of those. I don't think I could do it perfectly from memory, but we built 2 of those exact same ones on my DTS. It was great.
Yeah.
In Nepal.
And they really work. They work very well.
Very
And the cost of this is minimal. I mean, it's just a piece of pipe, and you get the sand from the river, if you can find a river. That's it. That's all there is to it.
And you can also just drink this.
Yes, the water is drinkable. I drink the water out of this, no problem. It's not totally, completely, but it's about 90 to 95%, which isn't bad, really. Better than it was before, certainly. So yeah, very easy to make, very inexpensive, accessible to everybody. And believe it or not, you very rarely have to repack it.
Really?
It'll last for years, just like
Do
that.
you know the statistics of how long they last?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen 7-year statistics.
Yeah.
After 7 years, 72% of the units are still in use.
Okay.
That tells you that they work. People like them. Nobody can steal them.
So heavy.
You can't haul that away very easily, which is good. That's an issue with some equipment that you bring. Somebody will decide to borrow it. So they can. So that's been very successful, the use of the biosand filter. You can put 9 buckets a day through this unit. So you put 9 buckets in, you get 9 buckets out. That's not bad, actually, for water for a family. So, anyway, sort of ideas that we've done. Sorry. What do we got here? Oh gosh, I pressed the wrong thing.
Share screen again.
Share screen, here we go.
Yeah.
Back to the thing, sorry about that.
Yes.
Is that right?
Very good.
But then wait a minute, that won't take us to the right place, I don't think. Share here. I need to, I know what I need to do. Here we go. Think. Let me try again on that. Okay, here's Water for Life. I go to Simon, help.
He's called.
I don't know where I went, down a black hole, technologically speaking.
Which one? Do you want to share this one?
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't know what's the problem here. No, it's okay. This one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now you can go to here. Share screen.
Ta-da. Here we go. Okay.
Good job. Yeah.
Oh, miracle worker.
Promise keeper.
I mean, we could talk about, terrible statistics, but this is reality, and I put it up here not to sensationalize, but just to say 3 children die every minute from bad water. That's almost 4,000 children every day, from something that could be solved. It's not that it's like a disaster or an earthquake, or it's actually lack of the ability to keep water clean. So that's something I think about quite a bit. Okay, so that was Fanning Island. And yeah, I love that picture. There's one story I'll tell you. Do you notice that the lid is bigger than the tank? That was a mistake. That was this guy who didn't do the calculation right. We ended up making a lid. They made a lid that was 6 inches bigger than the tank. So they were very creative about it, and they said, why don't we paint it like a mushroom? So they put 4 of them on the building, and they painted each one looking like a mushroom because it was out of school. I thought that was pretty cool. Cool idea.
If you make it too small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate, yeah. Anyway, so Cambodia, Myanmar, Nepal. This is Chandan, who's one of our workers in Nepal. He hikes up into the mountains of the Himalayas, sometimes for, do you believe this, 6 days to get there by foot, on foot, till he gets up to these remote villages, and he teaches them how to use what they've got, which is these food containers that are now waste, and to make these filters out of them, so that he's got sand filtration going on here, and the water can be fairly clean when it comes out the end. Very simple. They use stones and sand from the river to make this, like this.
Where in Nepal are you doing this?
Sorry?
Where in Nepal?
I can't remember exactly, but I don't know the exact locations. He goes to a number of different places, but often quite remote, and I haven't actually followed that.
I have friends from Nepal, so just ask you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I should ask him where he goes. And then what's happening now, which I think is really exciting, is that people from one project are going to another project. So it's not us at all. This guy is from Rwanda, and he is actually starting his own business now, building these big, big underground tanks. I mean, they are huge. You can see how big they are. And he has a team now of people, and he's able to go to high schools and other places and build these underground tanks, which is great. It's a business for him. But then he flew to Uganda, first flight ever in his entire life, to Uganda to help this guy build a unit there. So now it's happening laterally, and not from us. That's our dream, actually. Togo, this is French West Africa. We taught them how to make tanks, their water tanks. And it's a surprise use for the tank. It ended up as a baptismal pool because they didn't have a whole lot of water. But I think eventually it became just a water storage tank. Yeah.
When you have those big tanks that you showed before this one, so once the water is collected, do you use electricity, or how does it go to the people? How do they get to actually use it?
A lot of them, we put a hand pump on the top.
Okay.
So they can pump the water directly out of the tank. But otherwise, if it's going to a building, yes, normally there'd be an electric pump if there's an area where there is electricity. Otherwise, it's just going to have to be a hand pump always. And that was one of the things that Roos designed, was a hand pump. Simple hand pump you can make out of PVC piping.
Because for me, I really like when they don't have to use it like hand pump, and that's why I'm interested in having a tap, and I'm very focused on that. Like I'm anti hand pump, but I would like that it should be as easy as possible.
Yeah, so when you turn it on, the water comes out.
So just
but many places don't have electricity or don't have it reliably. That can be a problem. Catherine?
Is there a way of attaching solar power to these devices so they do have electricity, but sustainably?
But here's the unintended consequence of that. It usually lasts 2 days before somebody rips it off. We've done that. We learned a lesson. We put in solar panels. We even put a big fence around it and everything, but 2 nights later, gone. So that is a problem. It is an answer, but it brings with it another problem that you have to deal with. If you can put it in, on top of a building or somewhere where people can't get at it easily, that will work. But normally, unfortunately, it's so attractive, it's sitting right out there.
It's just also very interesting. I mean, it's good that the focus is providing water and whether it's and so it is still really good. But yeah, when we do things one thing and we see, okay, what can we do else, and then here and you have like so many other things that could be done.
Yep. It tends to be that you solve one problem by another problem, another, and it just gets more and more complicated. I remember, I'll tell you one quick story on that, but a guy phoned me from Texas and he said, I have the answer to the water problems of the world. And I thought, whoa, okay, he's from Texas. That's okay. And I said, well, what do you got? And he said, well, I built this unit and it has filters in it, it has pumps in it, it has a solar panel. He said, all you got to do is stick this in a village and it will solve all their water problems. I said, wow, okay, how do you get the unit into the village? Well, just drive it in. And I said, what if there's no road? Oh, well, I think we could probably helicopter it in, drop it. Okay. How does it powered? I said, well, just electricity. I said, what if there's no electricity? Well, we provide a solar panel. That was the answer. Okay. I said, how much does it cost? He said, it's incredibly cheap. It's only $10,000 for the unit. I thought, okay, now how does that work in a village income, in terms of how many years would it take? Anyway, it was just interesting, but it illustrates this idea, like you do one thing, you have something to it, something to make it work. Anyway, I want to show you Samoa because this is kind of interesting. This is actually at the Waiman base. We were teaching them about water projects of one sort or another. We had them build a tank and we had them build these hand pumps. So each group, they split it into groups of 2 or 3, and they constructed a hand pump. But that wasn't enough. They said, we want to know whose pump is the best. So we're going to have a pump off. That's fun. So they all stood in a row with their unit, and we squirted it to see how far it would go. And then they had a competition. They worked at it so hard. They actually worked all through one night. I had to stay up. No sleep, because they were building these things ready for 8 o'clock the next morning when they were going to have this pump off. It's very interesting. Anyway, I think, I hope we can show this video. Are you ready? How do we get the picture? Stop sharing.
Share and then reshare.
Okay.
Share again. Go to share screen.
Yeah, okay.
And you can see the video.
Oh, wow, we're getting there.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, this is us building the lid for the tank and building the tank. The tank was big, probably 3 meters high or more. Now you've got this incredibly heavy lid. You've got to get it on top of the tank. And I said, your problem. You figure it out. And they did. This is them moving the lid. I was a bit nervous.
Okay. So put them together.
Okay, now the next thing.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Just rest.
You want to get the newspaper off? It's only take about an hour. Okay, so that they got it that far. Next step, it's got to go on top of the tank.
What's it made out of?
Cement. It's all concrete. Very, very heavy.
12 people carrying it.
Yeah. So They said, no problem, we can do this. Let me see. I need to go to the next one. Let's see. I don't want to leave the meeting. Do I go share screen again?
Yeah.
Okay, but now how do I get to the next video?
Is it in your slides?
You don't share, I will tell you.
There's a second video there.
Okay. Maybe.
Okay.
This one, next video, right? This one?
Yes. No, that's one, and there's another one. This one.
Oh, sorry.
Right. So that one.
That
Oh boy.
one.
There we go.
Pause.
Yeah.
And open this one.
Share screen. Yeah.
Screen.
That one. Okay. So here we go. This is them finding a way to get the tank lid on top of the tank. First of all, they pulled out all these metal dawn bed frames and they stuck them up against the tank.
Very wild.
Yeah, very wide. Very innovative, I thought. But here we go. Everybody's talking. I think at one point I say, would you please be quiet? Because I worried that somebody would give an instruction and then they would drop it or get their fingers under it or something. I was panicking, but I should have realized culturally, that's what you do. You talk, right? I think. Anyway, here we go.
Try to be quiet. Listen, because he's going to give the orders, okay? So,
And I'll show you the result. Okay. Back to the,
Share screen.
yep, to here. Share. Okay. This is them getting it to that final step. It was ladies as well as men were doing this. The ladies, some of them were stronger than the men, actually. One of them was before she joined YWAM, she was a professional wrestler. So, you know, she obviously had strength. It was this lady down here. She's like very strong. And there it is. They got it up there eventually. And very, very excited and proud of themselves. So they got the tank lid on, and then here's the building.
All the bed frames.
And they have built 6 tanks like this all around the YWAM base. So all of their water comes now from rain catchment. They're completely self-sustained.
Is this American Samoa or like Samoa?
No, this is Samoa.
Yeah, Samoa.
The YWAM base in Samoa. Yeah. So that was a very successful thing. I thought they did a great job. They worked very hard. And then the final one I want to just talk about is Kosovo, because I'll be there in about 3 days. I'll be in Kosovo. Kosovo is a little country in Eastern Europe. It used to be part of Yugoslavia. Now it's separate. Here's Serbia. It's an interesting history because it's only just become independent as a country. And it was very, very difficult. It was basically Serbia started a genocide here in this area. These are Albanian Muslims by background. So they're connected here with Albania. Serbian is Eastern Orthodox Christian. And they wanted to eliminate this group completely. So systematically, they started going to villages, destroying all the houses, taking all the men out and killing them, and then putting them in a grave on the outside of the village. People don't know about this, but that's what happened. After they had killed 15,000 people, it was systematic. NATO and the Americans stepped in, and they bombed Serbia to tell them to stop, and they did. And then this became independent. So they love America. It's one of the few countries in the world where they actually love America. They have a main street called Clinton Boulevard, if you believe it, named after the president at the time. Anyway, so their background is Muslim, and before that, communist, or both, actually. Their villages are very, very primitive. Their water supplies are very bad. And so we've been working there ever since 2007. They have this beautiful sign in the middle of the main square, newborn, because they are a brand new country. And every year they paint it differently with different kind of symbols. This one was saying, don't imprison us as a country, because Serbia and some other countries won't recognize Kosovo as a country, and they won't allow them to be in the EU. So they're really kind of imprisoned in one sense. They want to be free. So anyway, that's Kosovo. It's a beautiful country. Parts of it look a little bit like Switzerland. This is one of our workers, Arden. He's a Kosovar, but he's done a DTS. So he's a strong Christian believer. And this is the other one, Vesnik. He's also a DTS grad and a strong believer. So we work, they work. This is what some of the wells look like. They're horrible. They are dirty, they're contaminated. Animals fall down there. There's been 1 or 2 incidents of kids falling in these things. So we have helped them to solve the problem. And each family works on it themselves. This is the toilet situation is bad too. This is the toilet. This is coming straight out of the toilet into this ditch, and that's it. So you can imagine what that smells like in the summer. It's pretty bad. Anyway, it's pretty primitive. So these are what the holes look like. And then this is the kind of thing that they will do, is to put rings at the bottom to form something like this, to make it clean. And then, again, I don't want to go into all the technicalities, but they put a top on like this. And they build a trench from the well to the house. And then they put a pump in the bottom of the well to push the water into the house like this. This is the pump that goes in. This is the storage unit in the top of the house. And then they end up with a toilet and a sink. Much, much better than they ever had before. So, and they really are proud of the work that they do. This is not us doing it. This is the local people. It's actually this guy. He built all of this. And now we use it as a picnic table as well as the water. So it's really amazing to watch how creative they are. But there's still problems because the toilet situation is not solved. This is one of the villages where there's a school here. This is the toilet block, and guess where it all goes?
River.
Into the river.
Really?
Yeah. So the river is highly contaminated. Looks like this.
Oh gosh.
So that hasn't been solved. You know, we need to work on that. They need to work on it, not us, but they need to find an answer as far as treating the water that comes out of the toilets. No answer yet on that. Here's a school. We did a project with Rotary, and we were able to bring water into. Can you believe there are schools with no water at all? No water, or in this case, this one, it was contaminated. This is the well. Several of the kids ended up in hospital, sick, because they drank this water. It wasn't good. We were able to help them put a treatment unit in, and then they had hand basins. It was wonderful. And they had this kind of honoring time for the work that had been done. That's me. This guy here is a teacher at the school, and he gave a little speech. It was very touching because he said, you know, in this village, we felt like we were totally forgotten. He said, the government's forgotten us, the county has forgotten us. He said, actually, we really believe God has forgotten us too. We're just nothing. He said, but you brought water. He said, we know now that God has not forgotten us. It's such a cool way. I mean, it was just very touching for me to hear that from him. I didn't expect that. It's really wonderful. So anyway, that's some of the work we're doing. We've now been to, I think we're on our 6th or 7th village.
And when you go to Kosovo next, are you going back to this place or somewhere different?
I'm going back to some of the original villages because they know us, and then to some new sites that we're looking at right now. I love this picture because it just reminds me. I took it out of the car window when I was leaving one time. It was just the kids there, and look what's in the background. There's work to be done here to improve the quality of their water. So that's my passion. Hope you didn't mind me taking some time to talk about that.
Is that how most of Kosovo is, or is that just like all more the rural village parts that are like struggling that much?
Yeah, the city, like Pristina, which is the capital, is like any
Quite modern,
city. Yeah, quite modern. But then as soon as you get out into the villages, it's just like going back 100 years. And a lot of the challenge was their attitude, their worldview, because when we talked with them, they'd say, yeah, we want to solve the problem, but really the government should do that. Right. If the government doesn't do it, inshallah, that's God's, it's never going to change. So for them to finally be able to say, oh, we could do something is major. Sometimes took as long as 3 years before they were beginning and just talking with them until they began to see some possibilities. So it's not a short-term in, fix, and out again. It's really a whole change in attitude.
I'm just curious because you're the first person I've ever met who does significant work in Kosovo, which is really interesting. How did you get involved, and what made you get involved in Kosovo?
It started with a professor at the university in Pristina who knew actually a YWAMer and said, we have a terrible problem in the villages. She made a little video to show how bad it was. Actually, she called it Forgotten Villages, interestingly. And then she shared that with our friend who was a YWAMer. He talked to us about it. Is there any way you could help? And that's how we started. Yeah. So it's been, interesting journey. Okay, so sorry if there was a lot of water in there, but let me go back to the video. Let's see, if I go, how will I do this? Let's see, share screen. I have to pull the other one up, I guess, to be able to see it. So I would think I would need to get rid of this and then go to this and then go to that. And then I would go here, right?
Yeah, perfect.
And then go share screen. And there it is. Is that the one?
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. And we say share. Oh gosh. I think you're going to remember my talks by my lack of ability to be able to. Anyway, so let's just look at a few things. We're coming up to our time, so I don't want to get into something too deep, but look at some of these interesting answers. This is, I think this is Shalom. This is a young lady who was connected into mercy ships, in Africa. She was kept in a room away from everybody else because she frightened the kids by her face. So she was actually locked in a room, unable to go out because of this. It's not cancer, it was just a big growth in her head. So the mercy ships were able to actually surgically remove that This is her. This is the same lady. She doesn't even look like the same person, but she's now a beautiful young woman. She's able to be part of the community. She's able to get married and have children and so on. To me, that's shalom. That's a lady that was in great need and that was able to be solved. So that's the kind of thing I'd love to see. And how about this? This is very interesting. This is a friend of mine in Florida who was brought up in the jungles of Ecuador. And he is an inventor. And he knew that in the jungle, they have no dental treatment at all, unless some Westerner comes and is there for a week and does, as much as he can, and then leaves. It wasn't an answer. He felt like the people themselves should be doing the work. So he invented this. It's a dental chair, and it includes a small solar unit, and it can be folded up and put on your back. So it just goes on your back. You can hike into the jungle with it, set it up, and then do dental work. What he did is he trained the local people to do the dental work. And we have to be very careful when we think that somehow local people couldn't do it. Oh, well, they do a fantastic job. He said he'd rather have his teeth worked on by these guys than he would by a normal dentist. They do beautiful work. They do extractions, they do fillings, and so on. And it's all done in the jungle. So I think that's a beautiful piece of technology that answers a need. He understood. I mean, here, I don't have to tell you that cell phones are very important. But cell phones are everywhere now, wherever you go. I mean, it's another one. Look at this. I mean, these are very, very primitive situations, but everybody has a cell phone. And they're not fancy ones like ours, they're just basically texting and voice, and that's it. That's all they need. And also they buy the time by the minute. So they'll go to a local store or they'll get online and they will buy time because they can't afford like a yearly plan, but they can afford 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's a whole different way of looking at things, but it really has revolutionized everything as a result. I'll tell you one quick story about that. In Central America, there was a village that used to take their product, bring it to the town and get paid for it. But they were being really, they were not getting a good deal from the dealers in the town because they didn't really know what their crop was really worth. I don't know if it was corn or what it was. Every Friday, somebody from the village got on the bus and went to the town, negotiated the price, sold their product and came back. They got cell phones in the village. And what they did is they began to find out what is the world price for this product that they're producing. So now on Friday they go to the town, they go to the dealer and they say, we want to sell it, and he'd say, I'll give you this. And they say, wait a minute, look at the world price. This is the world price for us. So you need to give us the world price. Their income doubled as a result in the village. And now they've got entrepreneurial things going on in the village and so on. Isn't that cool? A cell phone. What a difference it can make. It's really cool. This is not a joke, but do you ever see this? Okay, well it's a car.
Yes.
And actually you can take it apart. It's like a construction kit. 3 people can carry this thing anywhere. Complete the motor and all the pieces. 3 people on their back. They can carry it into remote areas. But you might wonder, what's the point of taking a car into the jungle? Here's the point. This is what it does.
Really?
Yeah. It's actually, it flies.
Oh, really?
Parasailing.
Oh, that's really cool.
So this is used for medical evacuations from villages because it doesn't need very much. It's not like a plane that needs a long runway to take off. It takes off almost immediately. Now, it's sort of interesting because they strap the people to the side. So you're on a stretcher, so you might be seriously ill on a stretcher on the outside of the vehicle.
It's like to see.
And I said to them, if I did that, I'd probably have a heart attack just
On the way.
doing it.
What's it called? What's this called?
I don't know, it's just called the flying car. I said to them, do you always make it? And they said, 70 or 80% of the time. I said, well, what happens to the other, what happens? Well, we sometimes land in a tree. If something goes wrong, we just land in a tree. And I thought, would I do that? I guess if I was seriously ill and I knew the only answer was to go to a clinic or something somewhere else, I'd do it, wouldn't you? Even if you knew that maybe 30% of the time you might not make it. It's the difference between life and death. So it's an interesting idea. It's just fascinating to me. How about this one? This is very interesting. This is people that have lost limbs, usually through mines. This would be in Cambodia and some other countries where, Cambodia, where else? Let's see. That's where I think Pol Pot was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they mined everything.
Everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. So unfortunately, people get the mine sometimes and lose limbs as a result. So what does that mean? It means that your life is going to be effective forever. But there is a company called Swiss Limb. It's here in Switzerland, and the person that runs it used to run these schools. Well, humanities. It's the same kind of school over at Brittany. And then God called him into this company to form limbs cheaply and effectively for people that have lost limbs. I mean, it's an amazing thing. And the Swiss government has recognized it now, and they give quite large grants for the work that they do. But I do have a video. Oh, here we go again. I want to show you what it looks like, because this is pretty remarkable. If I want to show a video, I would go share screen. I would go to here. I would go to here.
First, you can click the video link.
Oh boy. So
You can is it video here or I don't know?
yeah, it's connected to a video.
Open the link. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Mm.
Ah.
Whoa, the shortcut over there.
Listen. Okay, this is in Africa, and this is two gentlemen. One had lost one limb, the other one had lost two limbs. Now, if you think about that, what he was doing was basically dragging himself around on the ground or in a wheelchair. These were made, they're made out of resin, they're very, very inexpensive to make, and they're fitted for the individual. But look at this is incredible.
جاي اخوان علي تعالي يا عالم لوكا جكة سريعة لوكا براون جكة سريعة هاي سريعة الرجعة حمزة. بوكس ما في؟ بوكس ما في؟ معانا 20 ثانية يلا. بوكس مع حمزة طوالي بكسوا مع بعض. هاي لا ما معك زمن تقلع. معك 15 ثانية يلا اوكي ايش دعوة. يلا معك 10 ثواني 10 ثواني 10 ثواني 10 ثواني 10 ثواني 3 بس.
It's incredible. I mean, really. If you think about what that means to those people in terms of their life, it's one person or two people, but makes a difference. I think it's kind of cool. Okay, so let's finish off. We've got a couple of minutes, and then we'll be done for the day. We'll go back here. I might be able to do this myself. You never know. Okay, we're going to go to the next. Okay. We're sharing, is that right?
Yeah.
Stop share?
Yeah. You good. You got it. Yeah.
And then share screen again. And it's there. And I share.
Nice. Yeah.
Ta-da! I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, next is the coffee machine. Okay, this is interesting, and we'll end on this today. But this is a whole new way of thinking about language translation. You know, over the years, for Bible translation, you had linguists who go to a particular place, they stay for months or years until they understand and can speak the language. Then they get it into written form, and they can translate the Bible, right? That's a long process. That may be up to 10 years for somebody like this. Now, very interestingly, and it's amazing nobody thought about it before, but they've designed computer programs so that the local people can actually put their own language into a written form. Because they look at objects, they say what the word is, they put the word in, they can actually form it. Within months, they can have a written form of their own language. It's really brilliant, I think. So it doesn't need us. All we need to do is take the program and then have people work on it themselves and come up with the language and eventually Bible translation. I think it's really amazing. And it means Bible translation will go a lot faster.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I think we'll end there. It's 12 o'clock. It's a bit of a laundry list, I know, to go through these things. But every one of them is something that has an impact on people. And I think, especially, I probably should have stopped 15 minutes ago, right?
No, it's good.
Is this the right time?
Yes,
Okay.
it's perfect.
I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, what you think, and how does that fit in worldview and in an approach to community development and so on? What do you think? So, I'm done.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe take a few minutes that we think about your question and then we can maybe teach you. Or I mean, start whenever you are ready.
You may have questions or comments or thoughts about something like this. You understand the principle is to provide something that is accessible to people. And it's not about level. I get very upset when people say, well, they, can't think like we can, and we come up with all the answers because they haven't got the answers. That's totally wrong. You know, they're much more creative than we are. And we need to honor that. To me, that's a theological principle, right? That God has made us all as creative people. It doesn't matter whether we're in the middle of Africa or we're in the middle of Geneva. We're still God's creation. And we all have the ability to invent and create new things. And sometimes people in the situation are better at it than we are. Sorry, that was a bit of a preaching, but you know, I think it's really important. And it troubles me when people say, well, if I can do it and I don't know anything about it, I'm sure they can. I mean, that's so paternalistic or something. It's really not. We shouldn't think that way. We don't listen either, I can tell you that. We go and we talk. We don't listen. We don't know half the time what's going on. Anyway, you know what Helping Hurts says. It's the same thing. But we have to change our attitude.
I think it's really, really great. You know, the whole thing that we talked about a few weeks ago, but the idea that like to love the people and to share the gospel is like just to add value to other people's lives in a significant way. And I think this is, you know, the definition of adding value to people's lives, you know, right? That you're providing people clean water. And of course, as I've shared with you, that we're doing community development school after this, kind of really ties together really well, I think, in the sense of like, this is, you know, to be Christ-like and to share the gospel. Yeah, we can love our neighbor and take care of those around us, but to also go to these places and add value to their lives significantly just by providing water, you know, food, whatever the need is, and allowing them to be trained up in their own self. It's like, that's like a cornerstone of what we ought to do. We ought to have the mercy and love and support people in these kind of situations. So yeah, it's empowering, and I really appreciate the practical examples and showing the videos and photos that you all went there. It's great.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I'm very interested when it comes to worldviews where, for example, reincarnation is part of a culture's worldview, where, you know, people, if they're suffering or they don't have certain things, they're supposed to just kind of deal with that in this life because they're being punished for a reason, and they can come back in the next life and it'll be better. Have there been some interesting kind of encounters, perhaps with Hindus or Buddhists or different things like that, where actually, I mean, you mentioned that it took you 3 years to kind of, you know,
change the worldview.
Understand that. But yeah, what are some of your approaches in that? Because it's, whether you want to give them a Bible or clean water, often people will reject that. How do you, yeah.
We found the best way is just to listen, to sit down with the elders or whatever and just listen. Let them tell us, and we ask questions, but we don't dictate anything. We just simply listen, and then really ask God if there's any way that we can work with them. You know, there are villages in India where it's been quite difficult. They don't even want medical care because that would be interrupting the cycle. And so they actively reject medical care, which is a real challenge. But people, once they get a little bit of hope that things could change, you know, that is really the glimmer. You know, if that eventually happens, where people begin to, and that often happens, we sit around with people in a community and they talk about the issues and the kids and the families and all of that. And at some point or another, something comes up like, you know, I wish we could do something about this. And that's the beginning, that's the door, just opening a little bit. Seema.
I mean, you're talking about hope, and we all, in my village, now we had like 2 rounds. First we did last year in month of May and June, and second was in autumn. So first round was like everything went so fast and we did it. But this time when I was in village, and women often come to me or talking, and they were like, do you think our village would be better now? And seeing this question in them, I really thought, that their hope is coming back, or when they sense this, that if life could be better, what is now? I think that's already a good start for me.
I think so too.
Yes.
It is worldview, isn't it? It is all about worldview.
Yeah. Or they ask me like, could you do something so we can earn, because in daytime we have time once we are free with cooking. And yeah, I mean, this I like that they start thinking about that their life should have a bit more than what it is now.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other thoughts that you might have? Anything?
I like the example of the Indonesian man that you met. You know, the example that he can't get into the people of the gospel until he's like, okay, what do you need? And he provides that need. And you know, I think that's encouraging and good even for us as Christians in missionary work involved. You know, in this idea of not just, you know, yeah, okay, people need Jesus, yeah, but actually. You can go so much even farther and make so much more of an impact, I suppose, even sometimes, just by listening to the people and providing a need that can transform a village, transform even bigger than that. You know, I think we Christians sometimes just go and think, okay, they just need Jesus. That's the end of it. But and then, you know, maybe you impact a couple people here and there, and you say that's a success. It was hard soil. You know, we couldn't get in. But then in reality, that's not their biggest need. You know, you go in and then you take care of what it is, and you realize people are really willing and really soft and really able to listen to it, as long as you just speak their language and listen to their needs and provide that. So, your story about, you know, can these worshipers come? No, but you know, you're able to bring water for them. Like that's a testament to me too, that you can get into the hard places, way harder places than you can go with the gospel, quote unquote, just by simply taking care of people. It's great.
Could we also ask if Ibadan wants to say?
Yes.
There are questions here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's a comment that I have, contribution rather. Yeah, the reason that science doesn't believe, so to speak, in God or doesn't agree with him is, I think the knowledge of science is from God. For us to create things and invent things to make life better for us. And while God is using us in this area, we now tend to take the glory to ourselves. We now tend to say, okay, there is no God. It is we that we have done it. We now take the place of God. So I think science is good and is from God, and we should give God the glory whenever he uses us. That's my take.
That's a very, very good comment. Is if you substitute God for your help, then that's really idolatry, actually, because now people think you're the answer and not God. And that's not what we want to have people think. But we've tended to be that way. We tend to go, we've got the answers. So in that sense, you know, we are God to these people, because that's not right. That's not. We walk alongside people who have as much dignity as we do. Thank you for the comment. That's a very good comment.